On the bustling pedestrian street of Luo City, on March 2, 2030, life pulsed through the crowd as overlapping billboards flickered above in the chaotic urban scene. Inside the office of the Young Fan Management Company, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The gang leader sat coldly, lighting a cigarette, as he questioned the young man seated before him whether he truly understood the weight of borrowing a massive sum. 5 million. This man was Jang Yong, leader of the Ocean Gang and a key figure in the city's underground financial world. In a sharp, cutting tone, he warned that his interest rates were brutally steep. The young man, Chun, sat drenched in sweat, anxiety clear in his trembling voice as he replied that he would accept any terms the leader imposed. Jang Yong seized the opportunity to assert his authority, offering the loan at an outrageous interest rate of 40%. He proposed lending 5 million, to be repaid as 7 million within 6 months, and demanded collateral of equal value. Chun quickly produced the deed to his commercial property, pleading with the gang leader to consider it. Jang Yong scrutinized the documents with a sinister glint in his eyes, deliberately undervaluing the property by citing its age and a stagnant market, estimating it at just 3 or 4 million. Internally, he sneered, believing this easy prey had walked right into the trap. With finality, he rejected the 5 million loan offer based solely on the house's collateral and threatened to cancel the deal. In response, Chun acted out a desperate panic, begging for help and reducing his request to 4 million. He insisted he had met a fortune teller who predicted incredible luck in gambling, assuring him he'd win back all his losses. Realizing he was dealing with a reckless gambler, Jang Yong leaned back, more relaxed, and made a final offer, 3.5 million. He was certain the young man would accept. Chun responded with exaggerated, almost manic gratitude, accepting without hesitation. He thanked the leader profusely and promised quick repayment. Jang Yong, capitalizing on the moment, made the deal even harsher, demanding repayment of 4.9 million within just 3 months, or the house would be seized. He instructed Chun to sign an IOU so the funds could be transferred within 3 days. Chun agreed immediately, but before signing, he added one condition. 10 minutes later, Chun left the office escorted by a guard, smiling as he bid farewell to the leader, as though the deal had worked in his favor. The moment a notification appeared on his phone confirming the deposit of 3.5 million UNN, his expression shifted dramatically. The innocent smile morphed into a devilish sneer as he muttered to himself that the gang leader was a fool. After all, who would care about repaying loans when the end of the world was just a month away? Chen's mind drifted back to memories of his previous life, when a cataclysmic natural disaster devastated the planet, reshaping the very fabric of the ecosystem. He remembered the deadly surge in solar radiation that pushed global temperatures to a blistering 50 degrees Celsius, plunging humanity into a month-long inferno that reduced civilization to ashes. Meanwhile, inside the office, Jang Yong let out a mocking laugh, ridiculing the foolishness of the young man who had agreed to the inflated interest rate just to get quick cash. He sneered that gamblers didn't deserve to own property. His assistant, however, voiced concern, warning that the house might actually be worth more than 4 million, and that the young man's willingness to accept only 3.5 million could be a trap. But Jang Yong dismissed the warning with a smirk, insisting he'd seen countless gambling addicts sell off even their families to keep playing. He added that he had no intention of stopping at the house once the repayment deadline came. He planned to sell the young man's organs too. Out on the street, Chun walked while checking his phone, inwardly marveling at how easily people gave him money just for accepting a spike in interest. He scoffed, sarcastically wondering if the gang leader actually believed he could scam him. A sly grin crept across Chen's face as he reminded himself that he'd borrowed from every loan shark in Luo City in a single day. How could interest possibly scare him? Looking at his phone with absolute confidence, he thought that once the money was in his hands, no one should even dream of getting it back. His mind wandered to haunting memories of destruction. Cracked earth, withered vegetation, monstrous mutated creatures, the collapse of all systems, and desperate humans turning on each other for mere scraps of resources. Chun fully understood that in the chaos to come, those who controlled the supplies would hold ultimate power, and he was determined to become the ruler of the apocalypse. He remembered how billionaires and celebrities were reduced to beggars, groveling for a drop of water or a morsel of sausage, only to die pitifully in the streets when none came. Standing tall beneath the glow of city lights, Chun felt the weight of his rebirth settle on him. This second chance gave him just enough time before the disaster struck, and that was all he needed to carefully execute his plan. Just then, a sudden noise pulled him from his thoughts. He turned to see two girls chatting excitedly about a luxury brand of ice cream, their carefree conversation cutting through the darkness of his inner world. The moment stirred a bitter memory from his previous life. He hadn't dared to buy even one piece of that premium ice cream for himself, yet he had repeatedly bought it for that woman, Lu Wanqing. Thinking back, he now believed feeding that luxury to her had been a bigger waste than giving it to a dog. The more he dwelled on it, the more his resentment and fury swelled inside him. Determined to treat himself and reclaim what he'd once denied himself, Chun strode toward the counter and loudly ordered 10 of every variety in the store. His extravagant demand stunned the girls behind him, who began whispering in disbelief, though clearly impressed by his looks. The staff member behind the counter stared at him in shock, unsure whether to take him seriously. Chun didn't look like someone who could afford such excess. In a cautious tone, the employee reminded him that this wasn't ordinary ice cream. This was the realm of ice cream assassins, premium brands that cost a fortune. She clarified that ordering 10 of each type would total over 20,000 yen, just to confirm that he truly meant it. At that moment, a red-haired woman interrupted sarcastically, criticizing his plain clothes and boldly declaring that she would kneel and bow to him on the spot if he could actually afford what he had ordered. Chun turned to her with a sharp look and a confident smile, asking if she truly meant what she said. The woman, flustered, tried to maintain her arrogance, refusing the idea of bowing and questioning whether someone like him had the status to act so boldly. But Chun responded with an icy tone, saying he had given her a way out, yet she chose to leap into the abyss. And now, no one could stop her from fulfilling her bet. He took out his phone and displayed his bank account balance, which exceeded 20 million yuan, in front of the stunned employee, then told her to wrap everything up. Shocked, she ran to call the manager. The manager, Fei, arrived in a hurry, showing the utmost respect, only for Chun to order him to calculate the price of every piece of ice cream in the store, announcing his intention to buy the entire stock and close the shop early. The manager began calculating, barely believing his luck had turned into such fortune, as these high-end products rarely sold in large quantities. He informed Chun that the display items were worth 70,000 yuan, and the total including inventory came to 1 million yuan. Chun didn't think the amount was large. Instead, he saw it as a chance to store luxury food at home to enjoy once the disaster struck. He transferred 300,000 yuan as a down payment and gave the manager his address for delivery, which the manager accepted gratefully. Chun then turned to the girls in the store, inviting them to choose any ice cream they liked at his expense. Cries of joy and praise for Chun Zhao's generosity and good looks rose from the girls. But his gaze fixed sharply on the arrogant woman, excluding her from the offer and reminding her he was still waiting for her to fulfill her kneeling bet. Crushed by humiliation, the woman had no choice but to kneel while crying, as Chun stood over her coldly. He asked her with contempt why she pretended to be strong if she couldn't face the consequences. Later, at sunset, Chun sat on a park bench, enjoying the taste of the luxury ice cream and confirming its high quality to himself. Suddenly, he used his special ability to open a rift in the void. A black square appeared before him, his dimensional storage, which could preserve items in their current state indefinitely, ensuring his ice cream would remain fresh forever. He threw the bag of purchases into the void, happily thinking that he no longer needed to care about celebrities or models. Just having this ability gave him a wonderful feeling. He looked at his hand in awe, having believed that superpowers only appeared after the disaster. He hadn't expected his ability to return with him after his rebirth. Now, he realized this power would be his greatest trump card. Chun began planning his next steps. From building a safe house and preparing cold storage to gathering weapons and energy sources, Chun realized he had a long list of tasks ahead. While he was deep in thought, his phone suddenly rang. The caller ID showed a contact saved as Little Fairy, which immediately stirred his surprise. Chun looked at the screen with intense irritation when he saw the name. It was Lu Wanqing, the girl he regarded as a bringer of misfortune. His memory drifted back to the time she entered his life like a saving angel after his parents passed away. Back then, he foolishly believed she was the ray of light that would brighten his darkest days. But reality hit hard. She had only been after the small inheritance his parents left behind. She pressured him into buying a luxury apartment in the city center and demanded a hefty dowry to marry her. She was like a black hole, endlessly devouring his savings. She even went so far as to suggest selling his family's old house under the excuse that it was run down. Chun vividly remembered the pain of that moment, how she tried to strip him of his ancestral legacy just to satisfy her material greed. And it didn't end there. In his previous life, during the early days of the disaster, she betrayed him without hesitation. After everything he'd done to protect her, she handed him over as a bargaining chip to a powerful figure. He was killed and dismembered, while she looked at him with disgust, unbothered by the idea of eating him to survive if it came to that. Snapping back to the present, Chen's eyes darkened with a demonic gleam. Since she had willingly appeared in his life again, he decided it was time to settle old scores. He answered the call, her voice drifting in from what sounded like a luxury hotel room. He asked playfully why she was calling. She replied with a sorrowful tone, saying she was with friends and had lost her beloved gold necklace, leaving her heartbroken. Chan smiled wickedly, pretending to sympathize, and offered to buy her a new necklace, then shocked her by suggesting he'd buy 10, so she could pick whichever one she liked. Lu was caught off guard by his sudden generosity. He lied, telling her he had made a fortune through cryptocurrency and wanted to spoil her. Though she suspected it might be a trick, her interest was piqued when he hinted at a massive financial opportunity. He asked for a small favor, to act as a witness for a loan he was about to receive, promising her 5% of the amount as a reward. Meanwhile, an elderly man exited the bathroom, grumbling about how long her call was taking. She replied in a flirtatious tone, asking him to wait a little longer. As she juggled her thoughts, she quickly did the math. Servicing the old man all night had earned her little, but signing a document with Chun could bring her 50,000 yuan. In her eyes, Chun was a coward who wouldn't dare to deceive her. The call ended, and Chen's real expression surfaced, cold, menacing, and filled with anticipation for his revenge. The scene shifted to a new location, where Chan stood in front of a residential building with an engineer. He demanded that the place be transformed into an impregnable fortress. Within a month, Chan began listing seemingly impossible demands: bulletproof composite glass, exterior walls reinforced with military-grade concrete, solar panels covering the entire roof, independent generators, and a military-level air filtration system. He also requested a self-sustaining ecosystem and blast-proof doors with both biometric and mechanical locks, making the engineer sweat under the weight of such specifications. His objective was clear: to build a fully integrated combat shelter capable of sustaining life. The engineer assumed Chun was either a doomsday prepper or someone heavily influenced by sci-fi films. But Chun interrupted sharply, reminding him of his title as Master of Defense, pushing at his professional pride when the engineer hesitated over the budget. The engineer viewed him as an eccentric rich man with more money than sense, but also as a golden opportunity. Chun sealed the deal by transferring an upfront payment of 1 million yen, leaving the engineer free to determine the remaining cost upon completion. The engineer was nearly ecstatic, believing he had landed a once-in-a-lifetime client who would bring him financial freedom in one go. Chun, however, was firm about the quality of the materials, and the two men shook hands to finalize the agreement. In that moment, two opposing intentions clashed, like beasts of fire and ice. The engineer planned to bleed this wealthy young man dry, while Chun had no intention of ever paying the balance, confident the end of the world would arrive before the due date, and no one would be around to collect. After ensuring that his fortress was underway, Chun turned his focus to the next step: gathering supplies of medicine, food, and daily essentials. He considered this part of the plan relatively easy. What truly consumed his thoughts was a far greater threat. Not the disaster itself, but the darkness within human nature once law and order collapsed. While melee weapons could be found in any store, acquiring firearms for lethal defense was the true challenge. Prioritizing his safety, he picked up his phone and began searching through hidden channels and direct contacts. He messaged a seller, inquiring about the purchasing process. The reply came back with a meeting time, 8 p.m., and a promise to send the location later, with a strict warning not to be late. That night, Chin arrived at the arranged spot, only to be surprised that the seller had chosen a crowded residential neighborhood as the meeting point. Suddenly, the stillness of the night was shattered by the sound of frantic footsteps. A girl running in panic, chased by a group of men hurling insults and shouting for her to stop. They cornered her at a nearby alley, accusing her of betrayal within their territory and threatening her with death. Trembling with fear, the girl darted behind Chen Xiao, pleading for his help. When Chun looked at her face, he was stunned. He recognized her immediately. It was Li Yuyu. He silently wondered what someone like her was doing in a place like this. As the men shouted threats and the girl cried for help, Chun watched the unfolding scene in astonishment. He looked at her closely to confirm her identity, recalling their middle school days. How Li Yuyu had been the genius student, a radiant beauty admired by countless boys, shining like a goddess. Chun was snapped back to reality as one of the men yanked her hair violently, demanding money. Another man stepped in with a malicious grin, suggesting to their leader that she should pay with her body if she didn't have the cash. Chun could no longer stay silent. He stepped forward, eyes sharp, and ordered them to let her go. The men turned toward him with scorn, while Li Yuyu looked at him with a glimmer of hope. One of the thugs reacted immediately, charging at Chen with fury, intent on punishing him for interfering. But Chun dodged with surprising speed and skill. He grabbed the attacker's arm and twisted it hard enough to make the man scream in agony. In a flash, he delivered a crushing blow that knocked the thug to the ground. At that moment, a strange system screen appeared before Chun, announcing the detection of strong negative emotions: fear, pain, and anger. He stood within a pulsing aura of energy, startled by the activation of the negative emotion harvest system, something he had never possessed in his previous life. There was no time to dwell on it. The gang leader grabbed Li Yuyu and threatened to kill her if Chun took another step. Suddenly, another person intervened, hurling a brick with astonishing speed and precision. It hit the gang leader square in the face, knocking him down. The newcomer appeared with a mocking tone, scolding the group of grown men for ganging up on a lone girl. Enraged, the thugs charged at them, wielding clubs and sticks, screaming with the intent to kill. Chun remained calm, facing them coldly. With incredible speed, he countered their attacks. Meanwhile, the other person took down one of the attackers with a fierce blow, focusing his gaze and landing a punch that sent his opponent crashing to the ground. He followed up with an agile leap and delivered a powerful kick, knocking another thug down. Together, they completely controlled the battle. Chun Shao stood over the bodies of the fallen aggressors, stomping on one of them with force. With a cold, commanding tone, he ordered them to get out of his sight. Just then, blue system screens appeared in front of him, announcing the activation of the negative emotion harvest feature. Points of fear, panic, pain, despair, and humiliation poured from his enemies, unlocking for the first time an expansion to his void storage. As the thugs fled in terror, screaming, Chun smiled to himself, realizing how intriguing the idea of harvesting negative emotions truly was. Li Yuyu, still in shock, turned to him and gratefully thanked him for saving her. Surprised to see her here, Chun asked with concern if she was hurt. Then he took off his shirt and placed it gently over her shoulders to keep her warm, advising her to stay safe as he had other matters to attend to. Just then, the other person, named Mong, interrupted, praising Chen's heroic style in saving the girl. Chun introduced himself and revealed that he was the one who had arranged the meeting. Mong was surprised to learn that Chun was the buyer, considering the coincidence that brought them together a stroke of fate. The seller attempted to use a strange secret code as a formal introduction, but Chun looked at him coldly and called him a fool. Instantly, the system detected a surge of astonishment and confusion from the seller. Chun quickly covered up with a loud laugh, claiming it was just a joke to lighten the mood. Then, he said the correct password they had agreed upon. Mong believed him and enthusiastically invited him to follow. They arrived at an isolated house where the seller presented a box containing a Russian-made pistol, praising its durability and power while cautioning about the scarcity of ammunition and the need to use it wisely. Chun examined the weapon with skill and professionalism, impressing the seller, who now believed he was dealing with a true expert. Wanting to build rapport, he offered Chun a special friendship price. Mong observed that all of Chen's movements indicated someone with serious experience in the field. Chun seized the opportunity. With a cunning look, he began to negotiate, demanding a silencer, a warranty card, and an extra box of ammunition as a free gift. Mong was stunned by these bold requests, thinking to himself in disbelief that he was already offering a discounted deal. The seller grew furious, reminding Chun that this was the black market, where goods were sold at double the price, not a home appliance store where customers could ask for warranties and freebies. As the seller's anger and shock increased, Chen's system absorbed more negative emotion points. Deciding it was time to end the act, Chun paid the amount immediately. Internally, he declared that he had finally acquired everything he needed, supplies and weapons. Only one task remained. The scene shifted to a luxury hotel under the moonlight, where Lu Wanqing waited impatiently. She scolded Chun with fake coquetry for arriving late and asked suspiciously if his plan was free of risk. He reassured her with sweet words, all while mocking her greed internally. In truth, Lu looked at him with veiled disdain, convinced that he was just a naive fool who had sold his own blood to buy her a handbag, and that he was far too cowardly to ever deceive her. At the loan office, the leader praised her elegant signature while she focused solely on the money. She signed as a guarantor, thinking carelessly that it was just a formality and that all liability would fall on Chen the moment the ink dried. But the glances exchanged between the loan leader and his men revealed their sinister intentions. how she would pay later if anything went wrong. Still, she was confident in her looks and her ability to manipulate anyone, completely unaware of the hell that awaited her. As soon as she signed, Chun silently thanked her. It was her greed that had allowed him to pay the final installment for his safe house. Chun returned to the construction site, where the engineer confirmed that the place was now a true fortress, built to military standards, thermally insulated, and resistant to explosions, even nuclear ones. Chun paid the engineer generously and thanked him for the exceptional quality of work. Back inside his safe house, Chun sat on the sofa as breaking news blared from the television. It reported unprecedented solar activity and extreme heat waves set to strike the planet, warning of record-breaking temperatures. As Chun calmly polished his pistol with a white cloth, he turned his sharp gaze toward the window, eyes full of determination. He whispered to himself that the decisive moment had finally come, while the sky turned blood red and the flames of destruction signaled that the end had arrived. The catastrophe begins. On television, a news anchor reports that a massive solar flare has struck Earth. She warns of extreme global temperatures soaring to 45 degrees Celsius and urges people to stay indoors. The heat hits immediately and feels suffocating. Sweat streams down Chinia's face as he grimly realizes this is only the start. The entire city is scorched by a blinding light as the immense sun turns the metropolis into an oven. Civilians are already suffering. A woman splashes water on her face, trying to soothe her burning skin. Drenched in sweat, she leans over her balcony, complaining that the weather is killing her and wondering how long it will last. On the street, a chubby shop owner in a floral shirt uses a megaphone. He tells frightened neighbors that temperatures will continue rising and warns of an impending supply shortage, urging them to buy his last batch of goods before rationing begins. Wiping sweat from his forehead, the owner isn't worried about the disaster. Instead, he grins, seeing the heat wave as the perfect chance to make a fortune. A group of women approaches his stall, asking him to lower the high price of his watermelons. One of them crouches down to inspect the fruit. The shop owner looks at her with a leering expression, clearly more interested in her body than the sale. Leaning forward with a creepy smile, he tells the woman that if she buys 2 melons, he'll give her a discount and a free pack of tissues. He then suggests the women come to his house at night to enjoy his air conditioning. Looking uncomfortable, they quickly decline his offer. Undeterred, he leans uncomfortably close to the woman's face, pressuring her to buy now since there might be no food for sale tomorrow. However, his attitude shifts when 2 men ask for a lower price on water. He angrily points at them, shouting that he runs a small business and allows no bargaining. As the greedy shop owner carries away a box of supplies, he remains unaware that Chun Xiao watches him from the shade with a cold, silent gaze. Chun Xiao glared coldly, his eyes narrowing as he recognized the shop owner. Li Dafu. The sight stirred a painful memory from his past life, recalling a humiliating moment that had happened in this very store. He remembered Li Fu shouting to a crowd, accusing a younger Chun Xiao of theft and claiming to have caught the poor boy red-handed. Li Dafu twisted young Chun Xiao's arm. When the boy explained he had only picked up a fallen item, Li Fu mocked him, refusing to believe the excuse and demanding payment. In his memory, the crowd judged him harshly, gossiping about his background and assuming his silence was an admission of guilt. Overwhelmed and terrified, young Chun Xiao wept and stammered that he hadn't stolen anything, but no one believed him. Now, Chun Xiao stood stoically in the shop, the silence around him stark against the noisy memories. He noticed a price tag on a shelf, a simple pack of onion potato chips costing an outrageous 50 yen, marked as a manager's recommendation. Chun Xiao picked up the bag and sarcastically asked Li Fu if the chips were made of gold, or if they prevented heat stroke to justify such a high price. Sweating profusely, Li Fu turned around with an annoyed glare. Chun Xiao's system activated, notifying him he had harvested disdain +3 from the shop owner. Losing patience, Li Fu snatched the chips from Chen Xiao, yelling at him to leave if he couldn't afford them. The system chimed again, detecting irritation +6. Unfazed, Chun Xiao smirked. He leaned in, taunting the boss about hoarding treasures and ominously warned him to watch out for thieves. Li Fu stopped, confused by the threat. Then, exploding with rage, he pointed at Chen Xiao, demanding to know whom he was cursing and threatening him, asking if the heat had driven him insane. But Chen Xiao remained calm. He asked if Li Fu had recently suffered from insomnia, night sweats, and weak knees. Caught off guard, Li Fu's anger faded, and he admitted that he had. Li Fu grows anxious, wondering aloud if bad feng shui in his warehouse is causing his troubles. Chao leans in close and grabs the shopkeeper's face, solemnly declaring that Li Fu's yin tang is dark, a terrible omen. Suddenly, Chen Xiao viciously slaps Li Fu across the face, sending him spinning with unfocused eyes. Chen Xiao rubs his chin, diagnosing the man with a deficiency. Enraged, Li Fu recovers and tries to kick Chen Xiao, shouting that his whole family has a deficiency. Chen Xiao easily dodges the attack. While Li Fu fumes, Chen Xiao casually grabs a lollipop and mockingly advises him to watch his health, warning that anger is harmful. As he leaves, Chen Xiao coldly tosses a coin, predicting Li Fu might die young if he isn't careful. Li Fu is left trembling with rage. The coin hits the floor with a metallic clink. Immediately, the system glows red, notifying Chen Xiao that he has harvested a huge amount of negative emotion. Anger +20 from the furious shopkeeper. Several hours later, a black cat runs past the dark supermarket entrance. Chen Xiao stands before the glass doors, reflecting on his past life. He remembers swallowing his anger when bullied and vows that in this life, he will get everything back with interest. A sinister look crosses his face as he checks his system. The emotions harvested from Li Fu are just enough for a spatial expansion of his storage ability. Chen Xiao acts immediately. Using the harvested negative emotions, he upgrades his ability, expanding his spatial storage by another 200 cubic meters. He raises his hand, and a swirling black void manifests in his palm, ready to devour everything in its path. A confident smile plays on his lips as he prepares his revenge. The next day, birds chirp peacefully outside the shop. Still recovering from their confrontation, Li Fu walks toward his store, unaware of what awaits him. Nearby, Chen Xiao watches from the bushes. Suddenly, Li Fu freezes, his jaw dropping as he looks through the glass doors of his supermarket. He stumbles inside and stands motionless in the middle of the room. The reality hits him. The shelves, once stocked with overpriced goods, are now completely empty. Every item has vanished, leaving the metal racks bare. Li Fu's face darkens with rage. His mind races, wondering where his goods have gone. Unable to contain his fury, he grabs his head and screams, demanding to know who robbed him. Far away in his safe house, Chen Xiao watches a live video of Li Fu's breakdown. The system notifies him that Li Fu's suffering has generated 66 negative emotion points. Chen Xiao calmly sips a cold soda, smiling with satisfaction as he watches his enemy suffer, enjoying his petty but satisfying revenge. Boss Li completely lost control. He ran frantically around his store, shouting and cursing, demanding to know who had stolen his merchandise. He collapsed to the floor, nearly in tears, unable to accept what had happened. To him, this was worse than the apocalypse itself. The end of the world didn't frighten him nearly as much as losing all his stock overnight. The people nearby began whispering among themselves. One person speculated aloud whether Boss Li had staged the whole thing just to drive up prices. Another worried about how they were supposed to survive if even the supermarket was empty. An old woman claimed she had seen a dark shadow drifting through the area the previous night, and someone immediately questioned her, asking if she was sure. Boss Li, however, refused to believe any of it. He shouted that it was impossible, that ghosts didn't exist. Yet even as he yelled, notifications quietly accumulated in Chen's mind. Strong negative emotions detected. Anger +12, fear +3, suspicion +4. Chen stood nearby, watching everything unfold like a spectator at a show. He casually ate his snacks, finding they tasted especially good when paired with other people's suffering. With a faint smile, he remarked to himself that Li Fu's emotional output was impressively stable. As he reached into the bag again, he deliberately let the packaging show. The moment Boss Li saw it, his eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. He screamed that those were his goods and charged forward like a madman. Chun calmly raised the bag and asked whether the chips were made of gold or somehow capable of preventing heatstroke, given their outrageous price. Boss Li immediately recognized him and roared in fury. Chun continued casually asking if Boss Li could really sleep peacefully while hoarding so many treasures, warning him to be careful or thieves might come after him. Boss Li finally lost his temper, grabbing Chun and demanding to know where he had gotten the chips, accusing him of theft. Trembling with rage, Chun took a step back, feigning surprise, and calmly reminded him that accusations required proof. He even pointed out how strange it was that the entire supermarket was now empty, with not a single snack left behind. Then, in an almost innocent tone, he offered the half-eaten bag in his hand, asking if Boss Li wanted it. Boss Li stood there shaking, his face pale with fury and disbelief, completely speechless. Suddenly, Boss Li exploded in anger, shouting that Chun had cursed him and that now all his goods were gone. He accused Chun of being the thief and demanded an explanation. In his mind, even if Chun hadn't actually stolen anything, he could still squeeze something out of him to compensate for the loss. At the very least, he could use him as a scapegoat. Another notification quietly appeared in Chun's vision. Strong negative emotion detected. Anger plus 18. Yet Chun remained composed. He casually pointed out that other stores also sold the same chips and asked why Boss Li was so sure it had to be him. He reminded everyone that the shelves were already empty when he arrived. If anyone wanted proof, they could check the surveillance footage or search his place. He even added that if they found any of Boss Li's goods there, he would compensate tenfold. That statement immediately caused the surrounding onlookers to murmur. Some noted that other shops also sold the same brand. Others recalled that Boss Li had been complaining about prices just the day before. The atmosphere quickly shifted. Boss Li felt a tingling sensation on his scalp. Something wasn't right. How had this kid suddenly turned the situation around so cleanly? Before he could think further, Chun calmly added that if nothing was found, then the generator sitting behind the shop would belong to him as compensation. Furious and cornered, Boss Li agreed on the spot. Convinced that Chun was bluffing, he grabbed Chun and dragged him along, declaring that once the truth came out, he would see how smug Chun still felt. When they arrived at Chen's residence, the crowd gasped. The moment the door opened, they were met with a scene completely beyond their expectations. The interior looked nothing like an ordinary home. Everything was orderly, fortified, and astonishingly well-stocked. Expensive equipment lined the walls, sealed supplies were stacked neatly, and even large energy units were visible. Whispers broke out immediately. So he was hiding this much wealth. When did he become this rich? This looks like a fortress. Even Boss Li froze in place. His eyes widened as he stared at the interior, disbelief washing over his face. This wasn't a home. It was a bunker. Chun turned to him calmly and asked if he was done searching, even offering to let him pry up the floorboards if he wished. Boss Li's confidence completely collapsed. His face turned pale, and he quickly waved his hands, saying there was no need. He mumbled something about checking other places and tried to leave. But before he could escape, Chun reached out and grabbed his arm, stopping him cold. With a faint smile, Chun reminded him about the agreement they had just made. That if nothing was found, the generator would belong to him. Boss Li stiffened, his face twisted as he tried to backpedal, claiming it was all a misunderstanding and asking whether things really needed to be taken this far. But the crowd was already watching, and Chen's calm gaze made it clear this time there would be no backing out. Chun calmly asked him why he hadn't thought about stepping back when he was framing others before. At that moment, another notification popped up in Chen's mind. Strong negative emotion detected. Impatience +8. The onlookers began whispering among themselves. Some muttered that a man who couldn't even keep his word deserved what he got. Others sneered, saying he had it coming. Hearing those words, Li Fu's face contorted with fury. He snapped back, accusing Chun of going too far and shouting that he was already giving him face. Then, without warning, he swung his fist at Chun. Chun easily blocked the blow and twisted Li Fu's arm in one smooth motion. A sharp cry pierced the air as Li Fu fell to the ground, clutching his hand in pain. A new notification appeared. Strong negative emotion detected. Pain plus 73. Gritting his teeth, Li Fu finally gave in, shouting that he would move the generator immediately and begging Chun to stop. Chun calmly reminded him to hurry, pointing out that once the temperature rose further, going outside would become impossible. He added coolly that without a generator, surviving the coming days would be difficult. Another wave of emotional data flooded in: humiliation plus 30, pain plus 86, fear plus 101. Chun watched without expression, knowing everything was unfolding exactly as planned. Just as things settled, his phone rang again. It was Lu Wingjing. Her voice was anxious as she said several unfamiliar men had been following her for the past few days. They looked like debt collectors and she didn't understand why. Wasn't she just signing something before? Chun already knew the answer. He simply smiled faintly to himself, standing quietly as he listened. This too was part of the plan, and it was only just beginning. On the phone, Le Wanking yells, demanding to know why the Dai Gang is after her now. Our protagonist plays innocent, saying his heart breaks at her distrust. Inside, he smiles with satisfaction, impressed the gang moved faster than he expected. Calmly, he asks if the gang already knows where she lives, or if they've said anything to her. The young woman replies she managed to lose them but insists on hearing the whole truth. Chen Shurao reassures her not to overthink it, suggesting it might all be a misunderstanding. Right after hanging up, our hero sits down to enjoy a very luxurious feast. On the other end, the girl is utterly shocked by what she sees on her screen. He shows her a plate of grilled salmon just to tease her a little more. She can't believe it and asks how he can still get food of such quality. Taking a sip of soda, our protagonist says he has plenty more of that in his stash. One king is stunned and asks if he really has a huge stockpile of food saved up. She notes that with the heat, supplies are scarce and wonders how he got so rich. Our protagonist taunts her, saying it's great to eat something like this when the weather is hot. He then savors a piece of salmon right in front of the camera to make her even more envious. The young woman is in shock and can hardly believe he's eating real salmon. Her desire intensifies, and she screams in desperation that she really wants some, too. With a wicked look, he cynically asks if she has enough to eat over there. At that point, the girl switches tactics and says she's very scared to keep living alone. She keeps up the act, saying she feels like the dead collectors are still nearby, and offers herself up, asking if she can stay at his place for a few days to feel safe. With a seductive voice, she begins to imply she can return the favor in some way. The young woman completes the sentence, promising she can keep him company if he lets her stay with him. Our protagonist smiles triumphantly. His plan worked and she fell right into the trap. Hook, line, and sinker. He teases her, reminding her she never allowed him to visit before, but then sends her his address to come pick her up. Lu Wanking says the situation is different now and shares her address because he's her protector. With a victorious grin, he tells her to wait at home and not to wander around to avoid trouble. Meanwhile, Lu Wanking underestimates him, thinking he's just another fool who's fallen for her charms. Our protagonist hangs up the phone, reflecting on how arrogant she used to be, and now she's selling herself out just for food. With a cold glare, he's already plotting the next steps of his revenge against the gold-digging girl. Suddenly, the doorbell rings, and a woman with a child is at the door calling for him. Chun Xiao goes to the door and peers through the peephole to see who's there. Upon opening it, he greets Auntie Wong and calmly asks what she wants. The neighbor explains her air conditioner broke and asks if she can stay at his place because of the heat. Our hero reminds her she once called him a beggar and had security guards throw him out. A memory flashes back to the woman and her husband mercilessly humiliating him and his mother. Back in the present, the neighbor tries to justify herself, saying that was all a long time ago. She then gets furious and accuses him of being inhuman, but he scoffs, saying at least he has air conditioning. With that, our protagonist starts slamming the door in her face without hesitation. The woman curses him out, and the system detects her anger, awarding 38 negative emotion points. Inside, Shurao just smiles, satisfied to have taken revenge on one more person. Afterward, our protagonist swaps the SIM card in his phone so he can't be tracked by anyone. With the new number in hand, he prepares to put the next part of his plan into action. He makes an anonymous call directly to the members of the dangerous Dai Gang, informing them that he knows Lu Wonking's address and that she lives alone, making her an easy target. With everything set up, he just waits for things to unfold, his feet firmly on the ground. Shortly after, the young man goes out onto the balcony and observes the city, thinking about Lu Wonking's fate. With a satisfied look, he tells himself the show is about to begin. Night falls over the city, and an air of tension spreads.